How's it going, Jeff?
I'm really tired, to be honest.
It's been a long 3 days, huh?
It's intense. It's always so intense.
I mean, so we're at the Oslo Freedom Forum,
We are.
and you've been working hard
Yes.
at the Oslo
Correct.
Freedom Forum. Like, what have you been doing at the Oslo Freedom Forum that's made you so tired?
Well, a little bit of everything. Like, it's partly tired because you're like switching between these wonderful, like positive, amazing experiences, like hearing about people kind of beating tyranny, and then these absolutely horrible, stories of people being totally crushed.
Yes.
And so, like, emotionally, you're flipping back and forth and seeing friends and having good times and then being crushed again. So it's exhausting.
Yeah.
But on top of that, I've been doing a bunch of user testing on White Noise, the messenger app I've been working on. So that's been really, really helpful as well.
How's that going? Like, so what's the process of user testing? You've got an app?
Yeah, we have an app, and you basically put it in front of people, and you try to get a really broad spectrum of people. Some that know technology, and hopefully quite a few that are pretty new to certain types of technology, and you just ask them to do stuff. And you really just stay out of the way. You try not to give them any hints. You try not to like make any faces. You just ask them to do a task that you might think is basic, because when you build it, you've seen it a million times.
Right.
And you know everything is and how it works. And most people don't. So it can be humbling, I guess is the right word.
What's been the most, so you've talked to, we were talking earlier about this, you said you've talked to about almost 20 people that have gone through the app, and what was the most surprising thing that you learned while watching them? And this is like a beta, right? It's not shipped yet.
Yeah, it's an early version of the app. It hasn't really shipped yet. I think the most interesting, to be honest, the most consistent feedback were quite simple things, just certain buttons are invisible to most people.
I see.
And so those are really, really helpful things when you see the pattern emerge quite quickly, and you're like, oh, this is an easy fix.
Cool.
I think some of the more juicy stuff is just how early Nostr is and how much people don't really understand public-private keys and how that actually makes an account and what that means. So I think is an understanding that, yes, we have to build a really simple-to-use product, but we also have to sort of embed little bits of education within the product so that people can dig deeper and learn a little bit more while they're going.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
What percent of so you talked to let's say 20 people, some of them were new, some of them weren't. I mean, is it people that are newer to tech that you feel like you have to learn, teach more to, or is it even experts or people maybe more veterans of developer, et cetera, that also have to learn these new things?
No, it's mostly newer people to tech or people that aren't deep in the, I think most Bitcoiners get public-private keys pretty quickly because it's just an embedded part of Bitcoin.
Right,
So those folks already have a big leg up.
Cool.
And I think, again, though, you still get people that are deep in there that are sort of expecting one interface or expecting one way of doing things, and they miss certain core aspects.
Yeah, makes sense, yeah. So you've got this app, you've got people looking at it. What is this app about? How did you get started on it?
Yeah, so...
why are you doing it at Oslo Freedom Forum?
It's kind of a perfect venue. So I guess to start, Nostr has always had a problem with privacy. It was built as a very public, social media type publishing platform.
Cool.
But very quickly it became pretty clear to most people that you could do a lot more than just social media or replace Twitter with Nostr.
Okay.
And as soon as you kind of figured that out, it was well, how do we do private direct messages or private messaging between people? And the early attempts at that were just bad. They were simple, they were quick, they worked basically, but they leaked all the metadata about a conversation. So you would immediately know, who was talking to who, when. You couldn't see the actual content, but everything else about it you really could know. So it's been a long-standing thing that we know as a community we've needed to fix.
Yeah.
And I think it's been a problem that people have looked at different ways of doing it, but no one's really figured out the signal level encryption version of it. And so after hearing this for a couple of years and kind of waiting for someone smarter than me to go figure it out, I finally went, no one's dealing with this, I better have a look. And so I started looking into it and then came to the Freedom Forum last year, and after hearing all those horrible and inspiring stories, was like, no, this is the thing I have to work on.
Cool.
I have to figure out how to make this work.
So it's been a year.
It's been a year, yeah, it's been a year.
And you've gone from idea to, you have a working beta in a year.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Feels like a really long time to me, but everybody keeps saying, oh, that's actually really good. So, I don't know, it's encouraging.
Yeah, I mean, that is pretty fast.
Yeah.
How much of the last year has been working on the app versus doing research on what protocol to use and how to solve this problem?
Yeah. I'd say it's about half and half. I started out thinking that maybe we could use something like the Signal protocol and adapt that, because it's really tried and true, it's well tested. The Signal protocol has one major drawback, though, which is it kind of came from a, one user to one user, so like DM sort of setup.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, so it's a pairwise encryption protocol, which means that, I'm in a conversation with you, I'm encrypting the message to you, and you're encrypting the message to me. And there's a rotation of keys there that make it so that if we leak one key, our conversation becomes secure again as soon as we turn the keys over.
Oh, okay.
But if we're in a big group of people, I have to then encrypt to you, and then Max, and then Peter, and whoever else is in the group.
But Signal has group messages on it.
Yes, it does.
Is this what
but
they're
it
doing?
also has lots of servers in the middle. And so you send the message to the servers, they then re-encrypt and send it out to everybody in the group.
I see.
And
so that's the protocol they're actually using in Signal.
Yes, and now they do have some kind of extra stuff they've sprinkled in on top over the years where they have made groups more efficient, but that's still the basic property of it is that their servers own all of the network data of who is who, and their servers also do all the re-encryption to make it more efficient.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's, to me, that's I believe Signal is probably good actors. I think they're doing it for the right reasons, but they still are a central company, or they're a foundation with a CEO based in America, and they spend $50 million a year running the service. So if any of those pieces go down, we lose encrypted comms.
Interesting.
Yeah.
$50 million is a lot of money.
It's a lot of money.
That's a lot. That's a lot of money.
And they have to find that every year just to keep the lights on.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. So the thing, I think I recognized in Nostr is we have this huge, array of these relays all over the place that are mostly run by small independent people. There's a handful of bigger ones, but they're very simple and they're very cheap to run. And so you connect by default to more than one relay in Nostr.
Right.
And that means that if any one of those relays goes down, your group still exists.
Right.
And you can still continue to talk.
Yeah.
And because of that, you don't have this problem of having some central authority in the middle.
Okay.
And Nostr's identity system makes it easy to kind of bootstrap that network effect and find your friends.
So this is like a real decentralized messaging protocol.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's different than Signal, which is more centralized.
Yes. Yeah. And so I started looking at the Signal protocol and very quickly kind of realized this is not going to work in Nostr's setup for groups.
Cool.
There's just no way to do this. So
and groups was the goal.
Groups was the goal. Yeah.
Okay.
Groups was always the goal. It was like we needed to make sure we had groups. So
right.
As soon as I kind of figured that out, it was like, okay, what's next? And there's a newer protocol called MLS, Message Layer Security, which is now an internet standard. As summer 2023.
Oh wow!
Yeah,
okay,
it's really new.
That
and
is
new.
new.
The people that built that are deep cryptographers that are academics. They're researchers in the space. They know what they're doing.
Right.
And it took them 5 or 6 years to get the protocol to the level of which they were going to accept it into the internet standards.
So the timeliness of your project
kind of perfect.
couldn't have been better.
Yeah, couldn't have been better. There was exactly one good implementation of the protocol that was actually usable. So I had good access to the people that wrote the protocol, that wrote the implementation. Their initial thing was, sounds cool. We've never tried it in a decentralized thing, but good luck.
Interesting.
But they were there to answer questions, and it was
so
really helpful.
Where had they tried it? If they hadn't done it in a decentralized thing like Nostr?
Yeah. So they currently MLS is fully implemented and used in a couple of kind of centralized services. One's called Wire, which is sort of like Slack for governments. Yeah, and I think they do a great job. But again, centralized servers. It's used as a layer in Cisco's one of Cisco's video calling products. And so it does like all the negotiation before you get into the actual video call.
Got it. So it's a setup of all the data of how to make the actual connections.
Exactly. And I think there's maybe one mostly decentralized or peer-to-peer implementation called Panda, but I actually don't know if it's actually finished or not. I know that those guys are working on it, but I don't know what the stage they're at.
Got it. Yeah. And they're not using Nostr as their messaging network.
As the kind of message delivery message. That sort of thing. So.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right, so you found this protocol.
Yes.
You're looking into it.
Yeah. So the protocol itself is actually pretty agnostic to how you're going to find people, so the identity service, and how you're going to deliver the actual message content, which is the delivery service. And so they make that really clear in the spec. It's like, the spec is 160 pages long. Also.
Oh, Jesus.
It's super long.
So it took you 6 months to read it?
No, kind of close. But I had to read through a lot of stuff there to get to the bottom of what is this thing even trying to do?
Right, okay.
And then you get to the point where you're like, okay, well, they're agnostic about, how we're going to deliver things. So that's at least good.
That's cool. Yeah. Doesn't think a well-written
spec. So it's just about me on how are we going to put the pieces together to make it so that we can send messages across public relays where the relay operator can see your message.
Yeah.
But we need to make sure that there's no metadata and that obviously it's encrypted so they can't read the content.
Right.
And that was the piece that took maybe another, 2 and a little bit months to kind of figure out like how to put that all together.
Cool. Okay.
Yeah, and sort of in that process, I'd started building the app as more or less a proof of concept, just to go, let's test this out and see what it looks like.
Right. So you're like, I'm building this protocol, and it's really the marriage of MLS to Nostr as a delivery mechanism, and then Nostr pub keys and private keys as maybe your
the identity layer.
Identity layer, that's it. So you've got these pieces. You've got identity with Nostr. You've got message delivery with Nostr, and now MLS is the protocol for how to encrypt messages to groups of identities on Nostr.
Yeah. And the other cool thing about MLS is that it doesn't only just encrypt the content, it's actually giving you a cryptographic guarantee that the members of the group are what the group says it is.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, so every time you get a message, you basically can verify that, like, yep, it's actually still the same group.
Oh, wow.
So there's no, like, way where an extra member could be added without everybody in the group knowing about it.
Oh, so you'd find out.
Yeah,
that's
so you
really
find
important.
out. And so every change to the group state basically rotates the entire group state itself, not only the keys. And so you verify that every time it rotates.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, it's very cool.
That sounds like, all right, cool. Yeah, that's well thought out.
Yeah,
as
it's
a protocol.
very well thought out. Yeah, like, and when I finally got my head around it and I kind of could see all the pieces, it was all loaded into RAM effectively. It was like, okay, wow, this is very elegant for what it's trying to do.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
So you found like an amazing spec protocol that you can use. You're putting it together with Nostr, and you start building an app just kind of to maybe validate that the pieces you're putting together like work out together, and you can actually build like a messaging app.
Exactly.
And that messaging app is called
White Noise.
White Noise.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
So that's the app I've been working on for the last little while, and part of that process has been, okay, I've got this spaghetti code, proof of concept.
Yep.
And one of Nostr's main features is that it's interoperable. So, it's a protocol, it's not a platform.
Right,
so
okay.
I knew from the very beginning that whatever code I was building at a lower level to interface with the MLS protocol needed to be available to other developers.
Yeah.
And so kind of starting to pull all that spaghetti out, understand it a bit better, package it up in a library to then make it useful for other developers has been a big part as well. Over the last
that's
few
cool.
months. And so about a month ago, we released a bunch of libraries on the Rust Nostr library.
Oh, cool.
Helps developers just use all of Nostr.
Yeah.
And so now there's a couple of extra packages in there that help developers use MLS.
Oh,
Nostr.
super cool.
Yeah. And so that's done, and now it's like, okay, refactor the White Noise app again to make sure that we're using those new libraries.
That is a dependency.
Exactly.
So, excuse me, anyone who then takes the Rust Nostr packages that you've got will interoperate with what you've got in White Noise.
Exactly.
So that's cool.
Yeah, it's very cool.
That's powerful.
It's very cool. Yeah, yeah. So I could be, on White Noise in a conversation with you, but you might be on Primal,
and they just implemented
they'll just implement the exact same packages.
Protocols are cool that way. Yeah.
Protocols are amazing.
Very cool.
Yeah.
But
This episode is brought to you by BTC++, the premier technical conference series for Bitcoin developers. BTC++ is not your typical Bitcoin conference. It's a world-class gathering of engineers, hackers, and builders focused on the cutting edge of Bitcoin development. From protocol research to Lightning, smart contracts, covenants, privacy tools, and beyond, BTC++ dives deep into the work that's shaping the future of Bitcoin. Join us for our next event in Riga, Latvia on August 7th and 8th, focused on Bitcoin privacy, and see all our upcoming events across the globe at btcplusplus.dev.
Adoption's like a big part of it, right? Adoption is a big part of it, yeah. And this is what all messengers suffer from, is that sort of how do you bootstrap the network?
Yeah. But this, but it kind of sounds like this, like Nostr MLS, or what? Do you have a name for like just that part of it?
No, it's kind of glue code. So it's there. One thing that's interesting about MLS and really all encrypted messaging is it requires you to store state, right? Like you've got to have the information about the groups. You've got to have the tree of keys. You've got to be able to do this stuff in a ordered manner. And so you do need to store that data somewhere.
Yeah, okay.
And, I think on most messengers, that data is stored on a central server somewhere. On this, it's going to be mostly stored on the device.
Okay.
All stored on the device. We have literally no central servers. So, messages get passed around, but those are messages about how to change that state that you already have.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. That's cool.
Yeah.
Okay. But basically, but the standard is like called NIP. It's a NIP.
NIP EE.
NIP EE.
Yeah.
End to end?
No, well, that's why I picked EE, but
okay.
We've gone, Fiat Jaff, the creator of Nostr, really didn't want to go to 3 number digits. He didn't want to go into the hundreds, so he was like, we're using hex.
Oh, okay.
So you're allowed to use numbers up to 99 and then use hex values. So I was like, okay, I guess I'll use EE and didn't encrypt it.
Oh, yeah. Okay, cool. So NIP EE, but it's possible that NIP EE could be supported in things like Signal, WhatsApp, like Telegram.
Absolutely.
And so it would make like there's a potential for this protocol at some level to become an interoperable private messaging layer for
Exactly.
anyone because
Yeah.
it's a protocol
Because
and
it's a
not
protocol.
a central server.
And more
entity.
centralized services are starting to use or implement MLS.
Okay.
So a lot of the older messenger clients, like I've heard, and I haven't confirmed this, but I've heard that like Facebook Messenger is actually going to use MLS.
Cool.
But again, they'll still have Facebook servers in the middle.
Right. Because that becomes the delivery mechanism.
That's the delivery and the authentication or the identity service.
Versus your project is built on Nostr, which is using anyone who's using Nostr relays
Yes.
can basically send these MLS messages to
Yeah.
each other.
Yeah.
So you don't get lock in on a platform.
Exactly. And I think, the other piece that I think is really important there is that metadata aspect is actually critically important, because if you encrypt the messages but you leave all the metadata open, you can actually get a lot of information about
Who's talking to who.
who's talking to who, when. You can do a lot of timing attack type things. You can do a lot of a lot of authoritarian rulers use that data to decide who to go assassinate, including the U.S. government. The head of the NSA went on an interview and said, "We kill people based on metadata," and so it was like, right. Better make sure that doesn't actually leak.
Right. And basically what you're saying is they don't need to know what you're saying to each other because that's hidden and encrypted,
Yes,
but they
yes.
just need to know you're talking.
Exactly.
And when you're
in
talking.
some cases, that's enough for them to say, okay, you're a person we don't like anymore.
Person of interest or
Yeah. So I think, that was one of the major other things I was aiming for with how to develop this spec was like, how do we do this with the absolute minimum amount of data? And the only thing that goes on a message that's encrypted is a group ID value that can rotate, and you can actually use multiple at the same time if you want. So
interesting.
the only thing you can gather by looking at this group ID is a relative amount of activity in a group. So you don't know how many people are in the group. You don't know if it's an old group or a new group. As long as you're rotating those keys regularly, you sort of break the chain to the last part of the group.
Wow, okay.
And so no one knows, other than the people in the group, what the new number is that they're supposed to go look for.
Oh, that's insane.
Yeah.
Wow,
Cool.
that's
It's
really cool.
Yeah.
Are you worried that you're building something really powerful that the world could change irreversibly because all of a sudden groups can talk to each other?
I try not to think about that too much, honestly.
Okay,
I mean,
forget I asked the question.
I guess no. I mean, I guess on one side, yes. I hope that's the case. I hope this is an empowering tool for everybody. I think our mutual friend Gigi has this saying where he says, "If you build it right, you won't go to jail." And I think there's a really important piece in there. If you're not an entity that controls something in a certain jurisdiction, and you have no data that they can come look for,
right,
then you're of limited interest, to be honest.
Right.
If they came to me and said,
turn
shut
over
it off,
everything,
you're it's all on GitHub, it's open source, you've got it already.
Right.
I don't have anything else I can give you.
Right.
And so I think there's important parts in how we build the things we build rather than just what we build.
Yeah. So what's the current? So what's the current state of? So you've got a beta.
Yes.
You have a team now, kind of working on the project.
Yeah,
right?
there's more and more contributors helping, which is so amazing.
So originally it was just you working on the project.
Yeah. And then you helped out a lot with that by inviting me to one of your conferences. And
right.
A lot more contributors joined, so that was great.
So now you've got a lot more people working on it.
Yeah.
Shilling Bitcoin ++ seems to be the theme of this interview series.
Yeah,
but,
that's good.
Yeah. But Jeff came to Bitcoin ++ in Florianopolis this February, which was just
3 months ago.
3 months ago.
3 months ago. Yeah.
And got your first contributors, right? That weren't just you working on the project.
Yeah. I think there's maybe one other before that.
Okay, yeah. But now you've got a team of people that are hanging out, contributing. Are you looking for more contributors? Are you looking for more testers? Are you guys waiting in the wings? We're almost done. Everyone can have it soon.
New contributors are always welcome and always very helpful. Everybody brings something slightly different to projects, and I think the beauty of open source is yes, it's a bit chaotic, but you get a lot of eyes on things, and no matter how good your team is, you're not going to spot everything that the entire world could spot.
Right.
So I think it's always made better if the more people that look at it. Yes, we're getting really close. I think based on all the feedback we got from the user testing, we're going to make a bunch of changes to the design. But
cool.
we're hoping to have a beta that people can use very soon, a month or so. And then I think we're going to put a lot more work into a lot of security and privacy features in the app.
Oh, okay.
To make it so that the activist community can actually trust it.
So this group here at Oslo Freedom Forum is really your what do I say, gold standard of a user group.
Yes, absolutely. It's the North Star from the very beginning was if I can build something that's safe for them, then it's fine for the rest of us.
So you're doing user testing at this Oslo Freedom Forum, and hopefully next year it'll be...
I'll have an app that's already out and
you'll
people will
be
be
talking
using
to
it.
people about
and hopefully we won't be talking
features.
on Signal and Telegram ever again.
That makes sense, yeah. I feel like I was was just talking to Max about this, but I also ask you, like, I'm really excited about moving the Bitcoin++ community over at some point.
Yeah.
We're on Telegram right now.
Yeah.
Love to get onto something more decentralized, like White Noise. Are you guys going to have, like, features for, like, subgroups inside the app, or is it, like, everyone's going to be in one big chat? Like, those
We'll
levels
see.
of features.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. There's a lot of features there. You know, I think
That takes time.
being able to organize your groups into folders or that sort of thing on,
Right.
on a local, you know, just my phone basis is easy. Doing coordinated groups of groups
Right.
is a little trickier. I'm
Okay.
pretty sure there's a way to do it, but I think that'll be a little bit further out. For sure.
Okay, yeah, that's cool to know.
We'll get there. We'll get there.
Yeah, I'm not worried
Takes
about
time.
it. Yeah, it's cool. I just like
Yeah.
putting my feature request in, I guess.
Yeah, yeah,
like,
good. I love it.
Yeah, on
Noted.
air, no.
Noted, yeah, noted.
Cool. What else should people know about White Noise? Is there any part of the story that you think we like left out, or what do you want people to know about the protocol or joining or
I mean,
like
I think it's
working
less
on
about
stuff?
White Noise and more about Nostr in the sense that, you know, when I first found Nostr, you know, it sort of shilled itself as this replacement to Twitter, like as a social media thing rather than anything else. And when I looked at that, there was like some little spidey sense in the back of my mind that was like, no, there's something else here. Like, what's going on? And it took me kind of a week or two to kind of piece it apart. And I was like, oh, this is the internet all over again. Like, this is a whole nother shot at building an open protocol-based internet that the users are in control of and have the power over how it functions and how it works and how they use it.
That's cool.
Which we lost. Like, you know, if you were around at the beginning of the internet, like, it was an amazing Wild West. Like, it was crazy and it was fun and it was weird and it was like all those things. And we, you know, for technological reasons, really, we went to these handful of centralized monopolies. And so
Right.
the internet now is like 5 companies. And that's a really sad and terrible thing. And it homogenizes so much of, you know, human culture and things like that. So I think
user experience, like what people experience the
Exactly,
internet as,
exactly.
is
Every
very...
messenger app is a blue thing with a little, you know, chat
Yeah.
bubble or a, you know, paper airplane on it.
And Facebook owns like 80% of them or whatever.
Almost all of it, yeah. And so I think that's a scary world to live in.
It
and so I
is.
think it's really
Yeah.
important that people think about, you know, how they use the internet, how they use communication, and think about, you know, where their data goes. And Nostr is just a really fun way to break out of that pattern and, you know, get fun tools back into our lives.
Is there any way, like, so if someone's like listening to this and they want to get involved or like start experimenting with Nostr,
Yeah.
what would you recommend people do or try, or like, are there resources to build on Nostr? Like, what's out there for people?
Yeah, there's a ton of educational resources. Like, actually, the first project I ever worked on Nostr was just a site called nostr.how, which is probably
cool.
way out of date at this point because I haven't looked at it in a while. But there's a lot better, you know, education resources to figure out. Like, if you're not super into tech and you don't know public-private keys and things like that, you know, go learn that stuff. It's
Cool.
easy.
Yeah.
I would say just go download Primal because it's available on iOS or Android. It's easy. You know, it gets people started in a straightforward way, and it lets them sort of step up into, you know, owning their identity in an easier, more approachable manner.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Cool. Well,
Amazing.
thanks for your time, Jeff. This
Yeah,
is great. Where
absolutely.
can people find you on the internet or follow along?
Just find me on Nostr, really.
Nostr.
Jeff G. Yeah,
Jeff
I've like
G on
deleted
Nostr.
pretty much everything else.
Okay,
So.
all in on Nostr. Let's
All
go.
in, yeah.
Cool. Great. Well, thanks so much for your time.
Yeah, thank you.